Hi, Emily. So I've looked through this chapter. I think it's much easier to follow, much easier to pull out some main points here. Now, the big concern, it was kind of in the outline I had, is right now the chapter is telling students a little bit more what not to do than giving them strategies to implement, things to do. I think a key thing to do, and figuring out what we want students to do, uh, is can be really useful here. So I think the main things that I want students to get from it are first, like spend some time brainstorming by yourself on why this won't work and kind of make the case for them. The earlier you get to these obstacles, the better. Then you can pursue something else. So really troubleshoot it as much as possible, then find out what you don't know and ask questions to the stakeholders in ways that if something is going to sink your proposal, you find that out kind of front and center. And then third thing is maybe brainstorming alternatives. So I like what you have in here. So I think right here with the point of brainstorm as much as possible why this idea wouldn't work. Uh, I am imagining here what could be very effective. That's kind of the thing to do. Try to, find out the problems as soon as possible. We might want to construct an exercise that gives them 3 to 5 scenarios, like Naomi's scenario here, and says, think of all the reasons why this wouldn't work. And then maybe ask students, should do you think it's even worth continuing? What should she do? So let me just show you from chapter 2 what I've been doing here. So here's an exercise I have, and in this book, for various reasons, uh, I I think maybe some of these chapters, the exercises will probably be as much as the talkie text in terms of volume. So I took these scenarios here, and actually it's good for you to look at them so that we don't duplicate scenarios. So this is from your document here. And the goal I have here is to just brainstorm what kinds of research could be done. What could you find out? Um, and these seem like pretty good ideas uh, here. But if you can give some scenarios of things that are maybe more problematic ideas, like all the reasons why it wouldn't work. I just want to show you this because I think this exercise goes on. It's probably more than 2 pages here, and I go through 3 scenarios, and with each one a bunch of questions. So I could see something similar like that. I used the parking one already in here, so I'll ask you maybe to swap that out with a different one because I also have constructed an email uh, based on this later on as well. Now, this exercise that you have later on down here, merging competing stakeholder values. So that is a positive. That is an action, something that they should do. I would recommend changing this a little bit because it's asking them to do a lot. First, generate who the stakeholders, what are their values, and students might be all over the place on this, and then merge. What I think would just be easier if the point we want to get at is merge, is to present both point of views. Lucas wants to do this, and she says this. So what could Lucas do? Uh, what would be an alternative solution? And that's the real key thing that we want them to get from this. What if you meet the resistance? Like you don't have to just stop. This I think could be a good one if you presented Charlotte's editor's thoughts here. Um, so I think that this would do a better job of getting at the idea of merging if you just give them the two values to merge. And that way students' responses when they come to class will be sufficiently similar to one another so that they could compare. Whereas if we ask them to brainstorm what the stakeholders' values are, if they're off and they're really identifying different things than that, then the merges are going to be all over the place. So what we'd really want them to do is get at some creative merging of ideas in here. But this is a really good one of where you've already kind of done this, gone through a bunch of small scenarios and included that in the exercises. So in your summary right here, you have identified the steps that students can take. I think it's just bringing out a little bit more in the body of the chapter. So first thing that you want students to do is start by troubleshooting your idea. And maybe it is the case that the headings should be what we want them to do rather than avoid doing this, the problems. I'm not sure about that. But that could be one way to do. First step, start by troubleshooting. Or you could go through all three problems and then go through, all right, here's some ways to avoid these problems, troubleshoot, plan and listen, design your research to listen to resistance, and then merge responses could be a way to do this. This is up to you if you want to, if you're feeling motivated, like my comments make you like, oh yeah, I want to take another stab at it, then go ahead and do that. If you're feeling like, oh, I'm getting a little tired of this, go ahead, because I think I could take it. This is a good place where I could take it over from here. Now, as far as the other chapter, I think these sound like great goals here. So this right here, you really already, this right here, these are really two main goals here that are connected to this one. I agree that supported by data doesn't seem as compelling as it might. This could be something that we could mention, or maybe it needs to be talked about in the research one, or we should just bracket it off as an idea like, gosh, we should engage with that somewhere. But whether or not it belongs in here, I'm not sure. Okay, now, and I like how you're framing this. This very first one, don't have to necessarily frame this as a case study. Let me show you again in chapter 2 what I have done here. Yes, so this exercise here, making first contact, I just say, imagine this is happening. Which of these following two do you think would get a better response? So just go ahead and start off with something like that. Doesn't need to be framed as a case study per se. Yeah, and then have them identify the differences. Good. Now, framing problems as opportunities, and if you look at the document here, you'll see I have some notes over on the side. They're off the screen right now. But I think this needs to be broken down a little bit. What all does this mean? I think there are actually a couple steps in here. So they're using a language of opportunity, but there's probably also ways to frame a problem to align with your power channels values or holders values. And there's some stuff about maybe civility, not looking like a jerk, not just complaining, that might go in here. So, and that might go in a different section rather than framing problems as opportunities. But I just feel like there's probably a little bit more that needs to be broken down in here. We might also want to have another section, something that Susan brought up, was what to do if the person you're writing to is the cause of the problem. They produced it, and like the extra care and tact you would need to take in that situation. All right, the matching. These plans sound really good to me. I like it. I'm thinking bracket this for now with the data. Now, acknowledging your response's limitations, and I really like this caveat that you have over here, that this doesn't always happen. So I think a way to do this is maybe do kind of a CGA type activity, like compare, put up two examples and say, that one that's more salesy and one that acknowledges limitations, and ask them a bunch of questions like, what do you think about this? Do you, which one's more honest, more salesy, more confident, and kind of get them to brainstorm what are the different contexts that you would want to use these in, and then maybe lead them into a lesson about that. And then just say that the type of proposals that we're encouraging in this book are ones that we want people to really try for the best solution, not be a sales pitch, but acknowledge that the sales pitch proposals do exist. So go ahead and say, first be kind of like, these are two options, but then play our hand. Like for academic stuff, for things where there are lots of stakeholders where you're not trying to sell something, you probably want to include the limitations. And then give, some really good examples of limitations language and examples of showing multiple responses. So this is really excellent progress. Feel free to go ahead and take a look at what I've done with chapter 2 so far, and I'll be asking you for comments on it, but that might give you some ideas on how the sort of narrative and tone of the book is shaping up. And go ahead and send me an email just confirming what it is that you plan to do next. You could either work on this chapter or on chapter 3. And if you think we need a phone call, let me know. I think this sounds really good here.